Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Pete here with MixBetterNow.com, and today I want to show you how to get huge and amazing sounding clap tracks in your mix and why it's important. Let's check it out. All right, so we got a session pulled open here. I'm in the middle of mixing Stella's song by Zach Jones and the Tricky Bits. Please go check them out, ZachJonesandTheTrickyBits.com. Check out Zach's new EP, Rendezvous with a Comet. It is awesome. So in this session, we have 4 clap tracks. Now, I know you're probably saying, hey, Pete, what's the deal? Why are we talking about clap tracks, man? They're clap tracks. Well, the reason we're talking about them is because clap tracks, like any other instrument in a mix, be it a vocal, be it a guitar lick, a guitar solo, drums, anything, they can be as important as anything else. I want you to think about a couple songs that, you'll all probably know. Songs like We Will Rock You and another one, Bites the Dust by Queen. I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles. Hey Ho by the Lumineers. Stuck in the Middle with You by Steelers Wheel. Jack and Diane by John Mellencamp, Only the Good Die Young, Billy Joel, No Fun by the Stooges, Hey Ya by Outkast, Dancing with Myself, Billy Idol, Faith by George Michael, That Thing You Do from the movie, Cecilia from by Simon and Garfunkel. So you get the point that clap tracks can be extremely important, and that is usually deciphered in the songwriting phase and during pre-production. So I want to show you what I did because there's 4 clap tracks and I have all 4 going to a claps bus. So we're going to take it from the first chorus here, going into the guitar solo. I'll let it roll, we'll solo them up, and then we'll check out what we did. All right, here we go.
Although I want so much to hold you, take you dancing beneath the stars, and I could kill the man who told you you don't deserve the love that's pouring from my heart.
Okay, so as you can hear, the clap tracks to me sound very big, very punchy. They're holding their own weight in the mix here, and they have a very defined space, and they're really the most important thing in that section of the song, along with the guitar solo. So I needed to get them to a place to make them a very important sounding instrument. So let's check out what I did here. I have everything soloed up right now, so if we take a look, all the clap tracks are in this brown color here. I have 4 claps, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Everything odd numbers, pan hard left, and 2 and 4 are panned hard right. The reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to keep the guitar solo, directly mono, straight up the middle during that, and I wanted to throw the claps out wide. So if you guys have ever tried recording clap tracks before through a microphone, whether it's in your control room, in a live room, in a studio live room, anywhere, you will know that it is a very difficult thing to achieve, because if you were to just literally record one clap track, it can sound extremely thin and it can be a very underwhelming thing. So you always have to do multiple clap takes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass all the processing here. I'm going to turn off the a little bit of the room reverb I have, and we're going to take a listen to the original clap tracks raw, as they came. So this is the clap bus. I'm going to turn this up a little bit because they go down in volume. Now I have nothing going on each of the clap tracks. The only thing I have up here in the virtual mix rack is the Slate VCC using the SSL setting, the Brit 4KE. And I have this on every other track. So there's nothing going on these. We're just coming into this bus. Everything's bypassed. Here's what they sound like raw. So as you can hear, they're very, they're a little weak sounding. They're not very overwhelming. And if we listen to them in the context of the mix right there, just like that, you're going to hear that they get a bit lost. Let's take it from going right into the guitar solo with the claps. And it sounds like this. but they are not making a statement to me in terms of the way that I want them to, the way that I know that the artist wants them to. So that's what's important here. If I just pop everything back on and we listen to that again, you will really hear how much of an impact they make. Here we go. Okay, so the way that I like to essentially handle treating clap tracks is there's a couple things that I will do. The first thing I will do is I will treat them all as one instrument, as one unit, and the way you do that is by using a bus. So as I said, all four coming to a bus here. I'm going to turn this up a little bit because it's going to be a little hard to hear, but the first thing that I like to do after I get my balance of, whether it's 2, 4, 5, 10, whatever, I like to do some subtractive EQing. So I'm using the FabFilter Pro Q2 here, and I'm doing two EQ moves, all right? Let's solo up the claps. I'm gonna bring this up here, and all we have on right now is a couple of these cuts that I did. The first thing I'm doing is I'm using a high-pass filter to get rid of everything pretty much below 300 hertz. I could take it higher than that, but I don't want to. I want to retain some of the bottom end of the claps because it's important. You don't want, it's kind of like with a hi-hat. You can technically push it up farther, but I'm kind of happy with where it's at. And then I'm doing a cut around 600. Right here, I'm hearing a little bit of that cardboard boxy thing that I don't want. So taking about almost 4 dB there. Let's take a listen and let's take a look at the frequency spectrum here. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to solo this up so you can actually hear the boxiness that we're removing. Just kind of sounds like you're hitting a piece of cardboard, so I got rid of it. And then with the filter here, if we take this out, we're not going to be missing any of the bottom end. Okay, so that's step one that I'm doing, some subtractive EQ. Next up in the chain, I want to do some compression to add a little bit of sustain to the claps, but what I also want to do here is I want to get a consistent performance. I want to use the compression to set my floor and to set my ceiling, and I want to have consistent clap tracks throughout. I don't want them all over the place, certain ones jumping out louder than others. So I'm using the UAD Fatso here, and this is a great compressor because we also have the ability to drive a little bit of a tape saturation emulation, which is kind of what you get when you crank the input here. And I'm using the senior version. On the bottom, we have some more advanced compression controls like our attack and release. So let's go ahead and turn that on and take a listen to what this does. Bypass, on. So I'm doing about 7 to 10 dB of gain reduction depending on the hits there, which is great. I have a combination of the bus and the general purpose tracking compression settings on there, and we're just kind of keeping everything in a nice spot there and adding a little bit of sustain. So I really like the way that sounds. Next up here is where we're going to get a whole lot of our punch from and a lot of our weight. I'm using the UAD, the Thermionic Culture Vulture here. And I'm basically driving the even order harmonics. So this is very similar to any other saturation tool or color box. And I have the drive all the way up here. I'm increasing some of the bias. When you turn this bias knob to the left here, you're actually increasing the amount of voltage sent to the tubes in the unit. And on the distortion type here, I have it on the triode setting, which will ensure that it stays in the even order and not the odd order harmonics. I've then gone ahead and level matched a little bit of the sound as much as I could. So I'll start with it off and then I will bring it on. So this is off, on, and that really adds a whole lot of the heft and a lot of the snap, you know, and the just really the overall size of these claps. That's off, on. So combining the Culture Vulture with the Fatso, you know, basically doing compression and then getting some harmonic saturation after it, we're getting a lot of size and sustain, which is awesome. Next up, I'm doing some additive EQ here, okay? So what we got going on is we're using the API 560. I am going to be just trying to brighten up the claps a little bit. I want them to get to snap a little bit more. So as you can see here, I'm boosting a little bit of 2K, probably about 3 to 4 dB, and then I'm boosting some 16K, about the same, okay? So we'll start with it out, and then we'll bring it in. In. Out, in. Just adds a really nice little bit of crack to it. It kind of lets it poke itself out in front of the mix, and it allows it to kind of sit in a nice place. After the API here, this is kind of really bringing it home and kind of sealing the deal, if you will. I am using a transient shaper, a transient designer, whatever you want to call it here, but this is the transient shaper from Neutron Advanced, and this can actually be used as a multi-band. If I, let's see, click that on here, and this one here, we can actually target different frequencies, but I want to affect the whole entire range here. So what I'm doing is I'm increasing some of the attack. I want to drive the transients a bit harder, and I want to add some sustain because we have these gaps in between the claps, and I want them to kind of sustain to get you know, from one to the next to the next. So if I pop this on here, I've done a little bit of level matching, turned it down 6 dB, and it sounds like this. Turn this down a little bit. Okay, it's bypassed. So it's kind of like the finishing touch for me on the overall sound of the claps. So between the Subtractive EQ, which we've done here, going to some compression with the Fatso. Then we're adding some harmonic saturation here with the Culture Vulture, some additive EQ with the API, and then finally doing some transient enhancing with the transient shaper. So what all of those sound like is like this. Okay, here's before. I'm gonna turn this up a little bit to compensate. And here is after. Pretty big difference. I love the way it sounds. And the last thing I did here was I wanted to send this to a little bit of a very natural room reverb sound. If you've ever recorded claps, you're typically going to be you know, in some type of room where you're going to get walls, so you're going to get reflections and stuff like that. So I wanted to use the Ocean Way here. Let me turn this on, and then I'll show you the settings I have on here. So the Ocean Way Studios is great. It essentially emulates the room reverb, the natural room sound inside of the former Ocean Way Studios that is now United. And what I'm doing here is I have placed, there's no setting for claps, but I'm just using a vocal group, which I want the microphones to kind of be in the middle of the room. We can move these. So I'm using the mid distance and the far distance, 11 feet and then 18 feet. So when I have this on, it sounds like this. Just a real nice natural sound. And of course, nothing matters how it sounds unless it's in the context of the mix. So let's bring the band back in. Okay, let's take everything off. So this would be before. And bring everything in. And this is after. Like I said before, pretty big difference. Really love how that just enhances the claps. Everything's blooming. We have a whole lot of attack, punch, sustain, all of that good stuff that is really letting the claps find their own space during this part of the mix. All right, so that's it for me. My name is Pete with MixBetterNow.com. As always, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you have an awesome day, and I will catch you next time.